live. Hello. Happiness, the true driver of success. Wait, what? If you remember last week, there you are, Somnath, you're on.
I'm on.
Actually, I guess it wasn't last week, it was the week before, because last week Alex and I were in...
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, we talked about fear and anxiety and anger as the true drivers of success.
Right.
And we poo-pooed happiness as a state of mind that, oh boy, once again, did we leave?
I did not.
So we're just gonna roll from the top. Hello everybody and welcome to In Top Form. Happiness, the true driver of success. The full title is, wait, what? Because people may be asking, what happened to fear and anger, the true drivers of success, from the last show, where we poo-pooed happiness as a state of sloth.
And complacence.
That makes you not want to do anything.
Right.
And that active action and doing, rather than just thinking about it and being blissed out, are so important to success.
Yeah.
But of course, like everything we do, it's tricky. That's why we're taking the time to do it. Because if it was easy, everybody would be blissed out millionaires,
Right.
or billionaires. So you really have to sort of reconcile and make these two things work together.
Right.
Because anger and anxiety, as we talked about the last time, can quickly tip too far. And then you not only don't get things done, but you can't get other people to help you get them done.
Right.
Because you've made them like ferociously angry. Like you were today when you saw
I was upset.
more than 3.
You know what it is? It's crazy.
recommendations.
We got you down to 3, then it was 4, then 5, and now it's 6 again.
It's not that 23.
Yeah, but in 2 weeks we'll have a stack of books.
I explained to Master Somnath that you could only pick 3. You can't, as a viewer,
That's right.
listener,
That's right.
you can't pick more than 3. And you nodded like you are now.
Yeah.
Like,
That's acceptable.
Yeah, that's how I'm pitching this whole thing.
Yeah.
I have so today it's all going to be about happiness and how we create more of it. We've got, I'm kind of thinking I have maybe, between the two of us, 20, 30 happiness hacks here.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
And even some things that you can buy, because it's not true that you cannot buy happiness, you can. It's just that the same
Usually
thing
comes in pill form.
No, that we're going to strongly discourage today. Oh yeah, we should give a disclaimer too, since I'm an attorney, that we are not giving medical advice
Correct.
here. And that some of the things we're going to tell you, for example, a lot of people recommend St. John's wort as a tool for achieving higher levels of happiness or getting out of kind of that anxiety and depression place. And it's true, I think that there have been some double-blind scientific studies done that verify this, but there are also loads of drug interaction side effects. So that's just a good example. Anything we say that involves consuming something other than, we're talking about eating lettuce and spinach, so you're probably okay there.
Yeah.
But check with your doctor first, you know, even about the spinach. There are people that shouldn't eat too much spinach.
Yeah.
Popeye is not one of them. I date myself.
He thrives. He thrives.
He thrives.
on spinach.
Do you remember Popeye?
Yeah, I
You
used
do?
to watch Popeye.
You seem too young for that. Oh, by the way, we should explain that we are missing. We endeavored to have a medical expert with us, Dr.
Yes.
Wyman,
Yes.
who could speak to the issues, because we make stuff up sometimes. Not really. We'll let you know where the science and our opinion or experience,
Yes.
where the science ends and our kind of viewpoint begins.
But most of our, if not all of our viewpoints, are driven by either empirical data or real life experience.
I would say that's true. None of these are completely imagined, but the placebo effect is strong with me.
Yeah.
If I believe it's going to work,
Well, they call it the placebo effect because it is an effect.
and quite a powerful one, by the way.
Yeah.
In fact, in studies where you're giving people who, like half of the study groups, on some powerful chemotherapy or antidepressant or something, the placebo effect will still affect a lot of people.
I think one of the powerful examples was the total knee replacement.
Total knee replacement.
Was it
Where they
total knee
didn't do-
replacement
they
or was
didn't
knee
replace
surgery
the
of
knee?
some sort?
Like an
Where-
arthroscopic surgery,
Yeah,
where they
where
just
they-
told them.
They, I think it was 1/3, where, you know, part of the group had the actual procedure, part of the group didn't have the procedure, but they had the doctors watch a surgery and like feign the surgery, and to some effect, the results.
I
like,
do
the
want to
recovery-
dig into this because this
the
sounds
recovery
good.
rate was equal or very close to equal for people that had no actual procedure done.
Well, the brain is very powerful, and we're going to start, not right from the start, obviously, because we have a couple things to cover, by talking about the neurochemistry, because while we don't, and by we, I don't just mean you and me, Sam, even top neuroscientists, they have a gigantically greater understanding of the neuroscience of happiness than they did 20 years ago, even than they did 5 years ago. So they're on a trajectory of understanding more and more of this. But we're just in the infancy of understanding this. What we are finding, though, is that a number of studies are confirming things we sort of intuitively knew, or we saw in other studies that documented them or the effects, but couldn't explain them.
Right.
And now we're getting explanation. So we're going to talk a little bit about the neurochemistry, because then you'll see why some of the hacks work, or probably why they work. So all the hacks that we're going to talk about are not necessarily rooted in science so much as in experience of people. Right. But the science is beginning to explain why they might do what people are seeing and feeling and experiencing that they do. I have a great quote from Annie Tenzin Palmo, who is apparently an English woman who spent 12 years in a cave in Tibet. Cannot tell you why or any more.
Yeah.
But she said, "We do not know what a thought is, yet we're thinking them all the time." And you and I know, I've met the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Made him laugh, actually. Told the Dalai Lama a joke.
I don't know if that's necessarily a challenge.
No, he's a super happy guy. But I don't think he gets, a lot of people are afraid.
Sure.
Like I was like, "Hey, Your Holiness."
Yeah.
Launched into it. And I think a lot of people get worked up. But he made me feel very comfortable. You know what Shakti is. So I got to witness Shakti in the sort of 5 or 10 or 15 minutes before the Dalai Lama arrived. People just began weeping, and these aren't all Tibetans. This is like a Western audience, and they're carrying on just from the force. I mean, he's an interesting guy, but he is in a pretty happy place. Yeah. But I just think that this quote tells us that this is kind of what happens when you spend some time in a cave in Tibet. Everybody that comes out says stuff like this. Yeah. But it is thought-provoking. Yes. So in recent years, we've all started to better understand the scientific basis of states like a couple I jotted down here are happiness, gratitude, resilience, love, compassion. And are we getting any?
Yeah, we have Katie's on, Brian's on, Buckley is on, of course.
Buckley, thank you very much. Katie, very exciting. Who is that? Slater?
Slater's on.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw or not, but one of our sponsors, I happen to know it very well, Business Black Ops, a live event in October in Phoenix, which you, sir, attended and are teaching at this year. Yep. You have run the close quarters combat and taught the sort of the mindset piece as well as the physical piece of preparedness for the past couple of years, but you're teaching a business piece this year too. Yeah. So I don't know if you saw it or not, but I published the very cool looking new badge, identity badge that Alex has created for us. Well, a team working for Alex has created for us. I think he just bossed them around. Looks spectacular, and I used Brian Slater's. So Brian, I don't know if you saw that or not, but it didn't have your picture; it had mine.
But his name on it.
His name was on it. So states like happiness, gratitude, resilience, love, compassion, those states are very much interrelated with one another. And to the extent that we can understand what the neurochemistry is, and then we can figure out ways to create more of this neurochemistry more often and to anchor that experience, then we can really achieve higher states of happiness. Now, I'm going to caution everybody again, because I think some of these things are so good at both reducing anxiety and fear and boosting happiness that you do run the risk of what we were joking about last week.
Yeah.
Which is that you just sit there like a lump on a log. But then weirdly, or maybe not so weirdly, because evolutionary biology is pretty
Solid.
adept at these things, your happiness will begin to decrease as you become more sedentary and start not interacting with people where you can share compassionately.
Right.
So we've got some resources for you. There is a Psychology Today blog based on an article by Chris Berglund that's really excellent, which is the neurochemicals of happiness, and we'll put those in the notes here for you. I've got a blog from Healthy Living on the hormones of happiness and how to increase them, which is one of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. And then as a booster, I've got The Greater Good from Berkeley. I will remember his name at some point, and we'll get you that site as well so that you could use these. So one of the side effects, interestingly, of the digital world in which we live is that we're short-circuiting our own biology, which is pretty well designed to reward striving for things and getting them and being active. So what's happening is we're tricking ourselves and getting these rewards in digital ways. We're becoming more isolated. And so we see states of anxiety and depression going up, and our kind of sense of reward isn't really well anchored. We know at some level, I guess, we haven't really earned it. Like when I trained, under you and under Kwanjing Nim for years, you, especially me, the belt testing thing didn't come easy. I always loved training.
Right.
But, the performance piece of it and all that was harder. So it used to take me a while. And, but when I would achieve it, you knew you'd achieve it.
Yes.
You'd finally gotten to the place where you'd done your best and had figured it out, worked it out. Now people play a game. Now I'm going to use a bad example here because Tetris, there's some studies on this that say it's actually an anxiety-reducing tool to play Tetris. Yeah, there's some very interesting developing science on pain reduction and a number of things that these games produce in people. Especially, there's a very good double-blind study on chemotherapy and using Tetris and a couple of other games to reduce like anxiety and sickness and pain reduction too. So Tetris may not be the best example, but my guess is that we've become more isolated because we have these sort of superficial relationships with people on Facebook or whatever social media, and that we're not really getting what we need from those.
Right, but we think we are.
Yes.
Right, so it's like, and for what it's worth, Facebook and other social media drivers have done a great job of creating this habit loop where, so what's the habit loop is there's a condition, we respond to that condition, and we get a reward. And we can use that to create good habits for ourselves. But instead of that, so what's the condition? We're bored. Or, there's time, so we use social media in this like incidental way. As people, as businesses, we use it in a very purposeful way. So you're bored, you want to see what's going on with your friends, so you go, and maybe you post a picture of yourself or what you're eating or a cup of coffee, right? And then
he's saying this because I admired a very beautiful cappuccino you were having after your dinner.
Great, yeah.
I wasn't there with you. I just saw it.
Exactly, right? But then you get that reward of you liked it. A friend of mine that moved to Austin commented on it. So we get these perceived rewards. But really, I didn't have that. We didn't go out to dinner. I didn't see this friend that moved away 2 or 3 years ago. So it's this artificial thing, or very superficial, if not artificial, so it fades quickly. So what do? The loop repeats. You go back, post something else, and it just kind of drives this, whereas we're not making the effort to not necessarily create, but to nurture the real connections.
That's my guess about what's going on here.
Yeah.
Now, you alluded to something. We have lots of people watching who own their own businesses. If you're going to use this grease slide, if you're going to use the fact that people go back to this
Right.
often, then make sure that you're using it for good, not for evil, which is to say, don't just stick anything in front of your audience. Make sure that you get to know your audience and that you've identified the products and services that you have that are going to really, engage that audience in a positive way. Because you are, in fact, using this technology and getting into a part of their brain where other advertising media don't. Because they're seeing it more often and they're doing all of these things. So we have a sort of short list and long list of neurochemicals for you. The first set, the 4 big ones, we're going to 80-20 neurochemistry as we understand it here for everybody. So the big dogs that you want to be thinking about and maybe having at least a superficial understanding of so that we know why we want to do some of the things we're going to talk about. The acronym for it is DOSE. And the theory is that we could create better states by understanding these 4 neurotransmitters and what they do for us. So we've identified, and these are, we are drawing on science here, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So let's just take a brief, I put together a brief sort of review of ways to increase dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphin levels. And then when we get to the hacks, you'll see why they work.
Yeah.
So the number of things we read and we looked at to prepare for today, we found that in the case of dopamine, it's to set daily or monthly goals since they give you something to strive toward. Mm-hmm. To set exercise goals since dopamine increases in tandem with serotonin and endorphins when you exercise. So It's not going to be any surprise to anybody that some of these hacks are going to involve goal setting and exercise, because it's also should come as no surprise that our sedentary lifestyle is producing the opposite of happiness for a lot of people. And eat foods that are rich in protein. So you've heard all of us who've been on the show over the last few months talking about eating fat and protein.
Right.
And the government has been telling everybody that fats and protein are, that they should eat very little protein. And, I think that advocates of sustainability have been telling people to eat very little protein too. Right. And we could talk about that little tension there because it's not as profound as it at first seems to be. Yeah. So let's go on record as saying we are not advocating factory farming here. In fact, the opposite, because the proteins that we eat are not the result of factory farming, and in fact, they'll have the opposite effect on you that you desire. But we want to encourage people to eat foods that are rich in fats and proteins because the government, as it turns out, was wrong.
Yeah, and admitted as much.
Yes, yeah. But is it doing a particularly good job of going back and fixing the way they've pounded high carbohydrate consumption into people for 3 decades? So, on oxytocin, ways to increase oxytocin levels, get a massage. I thought that actually could be its own hack, but I wanted to explain that relaxes muscles. And prolonged physical contact with other human beings triggers the release of oxytocin. Show friends and family that you love them by touching them affectionately. You can hug your parents, throw an arm around a friend, or cuddle with your partner. That is not my wording. But by the way, I met somebody the other day who knew me in high school, or college, very early in college. And she was watching me and she came up to me and she said, I was just watching you hug like almost everybody that you met. Even the people that initially didn't seem to want to hug would eventually give in. And I do this. And with people that are a tiny bit uncomfortable with it, I give them usually linger. Well, I will do that too. But I go the hug, which is the feminine, like the yin and the yang is the hug with the back slap. Yeah. And that makes people go like, that's okay, that's manly. Yeah. But I also, she said that. She said, I used to watch you. You were always like a student of how people would react to things. Mm-hmm. And I would hold the hug a little too long and make them uncomfortable. But I did not come from a hugging family.
Also, the lingering hug is getting a lot of likes.
Now, I want to know who likes the lingering hug. How many folks do we have on? Anybody we should say hi to? We've been saying hi to people as they come on.
Katie. is still on. Buckley's on. Alex is on.
Alex, welcome. We miss you, by the way.
Yes, I let him know that we had some technical.
We had tech challenges right away.
Right from the
Immediately.
Looks like one of his buddies, Jeremy Muir.
Oh, Jeremy, welcome.
Slater's on as well.
Nice. Well, welcome, everybody. So we're back to oxytocin. Here's the thing, is contact and doing things for one another both produce oxytocin.
Right.
And we're going to talk about what these things do. Serotonin, ways to increase serotonin levels, spend time in the sun, since sunlight causes your body to produce vitamin D, which we should say we're in the Northeast as we're speaking here. And in the wintertime, we have, in the Northeast, woefully low levels of vitamin D, which affect the metabolism of all sorts of other things, and it affects a lot of your neurochemistry in a number of unexpected ways. So talk to your doctor about supplementing vitamin D, in some cases, year-round, depending on your levels.
If you live, I think, north of Maryland, you probably need to supplement year-round.
But it is one of those things where you would get a blood test first.
Yes.
But it's important to have appropriate levels. And a lot of times when we're talking about these things too, think about maybe having a consultation, if you've never had one before, with a functional medicine doc, rather than just your GP. Because this isn't stuff that they were ever taught or that they think about very much.
Right.
And so in general practice of medicine, the time pressures are so great that they just don't have the ability to deal with some of these functional medical issues.
And like anything, you're only going to get the answers to the questions you ask. So they have a set, what's your cholesterol level, what's your BMI, some major indicators that they're looking for, because that's all they have bandwidth to do.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you may show up in the green, quote-unquote, normal level.
Right.
But I used to ask those doctors, well, who's that normal for? A 45-year-old man or a 55? Who's the normal? And the functional medicine docs are good. I went to a doc.
Or the 20-year-old college student that volunteered for the study.
Exactly. Yeah. So that may be a very deceptive piece of information that they're relying on. They just see the green and they go on. Again, this is a criticism of medicine. It's a criticism of maybe the system of medicine that we've got going now. But I went to a functional medicine doc who's here in the Northeast, and if anybody wants the name, we could give it to you offline. And the first appointment was an hour and a half. And he started off, I thought, brilliantly by saying, like as an interrogator, I liked this approach. He said, so why are you here? And I told him why I thought I was there.
Yeah.
And then he did this, which is a really exceptional communication, interrogative technique. And what else? So now, even though I know what's being done to me, I happily go on for another 7 or 8 minutes, and then he goes, and then I go give more. Yeah. And so it's just peeling back the onion, and you do.
So that process is actually something that we've introduced in our intake process for people coming to the gym. So, for whether they're for fitness or learning self-defense, people are nervous and they have a certain expectation of what they think we want to hear. So, it starts with what are you here for? And it's such an easy but great way to dig in. Well, okay, that's what you're really here for, and now we can help you with that.
That is very good. So, you thought you were coming here just to learn about happiness today, but there's a giant business hack right there. Whether you're practicing medicine, running a martial arts studio or a fitness center, whatever you're doing. I mean, it's the same for me. I need to know a lot more than people think I do in order to do a really good job for them in their estate planning. People don't expect to have to tell me all of these things. So I have to find a natural way that doesn't cause tension to get it out.
Right.
One of the other things, since we're on a couple little communications hacks before we go on with the rest of this is, I will often say at the start of that, which he did not do, hey, before we get started or before we begin, and I'll even make a little gesture like that. And we can talk more about that later. So serotonin, spend time in the sun. Here's a good one. Think happy thoughts. So we'll get a little bit more into the particulars of how to do these. Consume foods like milk and corn, since they contain tryptophan, a substance your body converts into serotonin. Other carbohydrates contain tryptophan too. So when we talk about eating more protein for most people and a lot more fats, good healthy fats for most people. We are not saying you don't eat healthy carbs.
Right.
We are just saying, because you need these substances from carbs, but you're going to want to eat healthy carbs. You're not going to get any of this from, a box of dots.
Yeah.
Just to go retro on the candy like we did with Popeye.
Yeah.
Do low intensity workouts that your body produces serotonin when it's performing aerobic exercise, as opposed to the endorphins it produces during anaerobic exercise. Yeah. So, you and I have talked a little bit about this, and you and Pat talked about this on the fitness shows.
Yeah.
But you really want to have both of these. But what we've all agreed, I think, the science is telling us, is we don't have to hop on the treadmill. Or now I know there are people that love to run and love the endorphin release, which is what we're getting to next. But it doesn't take 2 hours of aerobic exercise 3 days a week to get functional fitness results for most people. Let me see if I could find endorphins here. Yep. Exercise, certain kinds of exercise we'll talk about, and eating spicy foods, since your tongue has receptors that react to spice by sending messages to your brain that are similar to pain signals, causing your brain to release endorphins, which is a way of kind of getting through pain. So actually exercising through pain, which creates endorphins, I could speak to this because I don't remember if it was you that told me this or somebody said, whatever age you are, when you hurt your lower back, which I had never done before, you immediately become 102 years old.
That wasn't me.
Oh, that was my experience, by the way. And, it was horrible.
Yeah.
But I felt like I couldn't exercise, and it just got worse. And I put heat on, which of course just did increase the inflammation.
Right.
And so then I went, once I found out that I should be icing it, I iced it, and then exercising through the pain produced endorphins. And it was amazing that after not too many exercises, you got to the point where you could do things again. And I thought, holy cow, I may never be better again. This was so painful. And I was deadlifting, this morning a reasonable amount of weight again. So,
Papa's on. Give him a shout
out. Papa.
Yeah.
Papa sent you a beautiful message the other day.
He did.
That I also received. Yeah. Papa, we were
touched.
Yeah.
In a good way.
By the way, not like we had to call the police or anything. Show them where Bappa had touched Somnath. But Bappa has a way of creating, most of these positive neurotransmitters. He is the king of happiness, actually.
That's right.
And Bappa, I should tell you a story. I'm sure all the other people listening in won't mind if we just pause to tell Bappa a story.
Not at all.
But that's how important this is.
Many of the people probably know Bappa anyway.
Yeah, they probably do. I was just with a really badass guy who also knows Bappa, and he was remembering that he had gone to, that was a 3 Days to Success event, and he said that between what Bappa did and what I did with that sort of reprogramming that we do, he said typically I get back from a business conference and I'm maybe euphoric for a day or two, and then I kind of crash because I realize oh, it was all a lie. And he said, but I was euphoric. Bappa, he played that song, Pharrell's song, which Bappa was encouraging him to do. He said for so many months, every morning when he came to work, that now he wants to kill people when he hears it. But then he had a sort of a 6-month run of euphoria that was
a pretty good tale.
Yeah, nothing he had ever experienced before. So Bappa,
Pete Wishney's on too.
Pete Wishney, but this is an all-star cast of people joining us. Dr. Wishney, welcome. And just
says he's in Orlando.
He's never where you think he is. He's not a guy. I don't think
that's very true.
I don't think Dr. Wishney has a. By the way, Dr. Wishney.
I don't think you mean just geographically.
No. No, I don't. I just mean in every possible way. So, listen, anybody that wants to jump into this and share experiences, Somnath is on it for you. So, I'm sure that this won't be as smooth if we try to get people's comments as if Alex was here when you and I just ignore all of this. But
yeah, I'm struggling. But I'm doing what I can.
We admitted to Alex already, by the way, that it was, we had problems. Here's Bappa's favorite piece of the chemistry of happiness, the endocannabinoids. So this is not one of the top four. The top four, as we mentioned, the acronym is DOSE. But endocannabinoids are also known as the bliss molecule. They're produced naturally. And BAPA is an expert at helping people to create more. Dopamine is really kind of known as the reward molecule, and it's responsible for reward-driven behavior. And pleasure-seeking, actually, is another one. Oxytocin, the bonding molecule, also responsible for a lot of happiness. So you know, mothers, when they give birth, have through-the-roof high levels of oxytocin, which doesn't necessarily translate any longer to their connection with their spouses or partners or friends, but it does help them with the crying baby. In oxytocin, I found this one study interesting. I thought I would share it because it mentioned humans and dogs. It was a 2003 study. Oxytocin levels rose in both the dog and the owner after time spent cuddling. And I don't think you're going to mind me sharing this. I know you are a cuddler with your dog.
Absolutely.
And you have shared. Typically, though,
it's my wife sharing.
Yeah. But you have not put a stop to that, as though you could. But you and I are both dog cuddlers.
Yeah.
You have a bigger dog to cuddle with. Tucker sort of just goes up. But really, these studies show oxytocin kind of going through the roof. So the author's suggestion, whose summary of this oxytocin study I was reading, said, if you don't have another human being to offer you affection, get a dog.
Yeah.
But there is some truth to that.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah, there is some truth to that. Endorphin is the pain-killing molecule, and so that's why you see a lot of runners, kind of accused of craving the runner's high, because they're actually creating pain, which then their body dumps endorphins out to stop. Endorphins are produced by the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus during strenuous physical exertion. We have the super clean rating, no explicit, so I'm just going to say that the author of this executive summary of the study said, this includes sexual intercourse, which they were advocating as a cure for depression. Make pursuits, I guess they mean in, like a healthy way. Make pursuits a part of your regular life to keep endorphins pumping. So this is, again, going to this idea of goal setting coupled with physical activity.
Right.
And typically, improving functional strength involves getting to a point where there is some pain, like early pain, which you're then overcoming, and you get this rush.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying, like, no pain, no gain, which, like anything else, has to be done in the right way. So, in the exercise world, we said, like, the pain of injury is bad, but the pain of effort is good. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to put it. 2 or 3 more, and then we'll get on to how do we really produce more of these. GABA is the anti-anxiety molecule. GABA is an inhibitory molecule. It slows down the firing of neurons and creates a sense of calmness. So naturally, you're going to hear hacks from us having to do with yoga, meditation, relaxation, that will help you to stimulate GABA production. Serotonin, the confidence molecule, it plays a number of different roles in our bodies, and it is complicated. Like all of these, they interact with one another. It's not just that the one does this one thing; they all interact. Serotonin is one that's particularly interactive with lots of other neurotransmitters. Ultimately, the link between higher serotonin and lack of rejection sensitivity allows people to put themselves in a situation that will bolster self-esteem, increase feelings of worthiness, and create a sense of belonging. So to increase serotonin, you would challenge yourself regularly and pursue things that reinforce a sense of purpose, meaning, and accomplishment. This is the sort of I did it effect, but this is what you and I have talked about a number of times, which is getting out of the comfort zone.
Right.
This goes to also the mindset of resilience that we see in, like, developed to an incredible degree in special forces operators. It is the we're just going to keep going no matter what.
Right.
Which does produce pain that you overcome, which then fuels this even more. So this is something that we'll spend some time talking about, because you would think to achieve happiness, you might want to stay in a happy place, but it's not true. Happiness is sort of boosted by activity, which gets us back to the whole problem of, wait a second, I thought you said it was anger and anxiety and frustration that drove action that was really what produced success. And we're saying, no, even happiness is fueled by getting out of the comfort zone
Right.
and realizing that you conquered things. And you and I have talked about this too, Sam. Most people want to stay where they're comfortable, but if we have things that are bothering us out here, and we, with mindfulness and intention practice, going a little bit outside of that so that they don't bother us anymore, we sort of develop expertise. That takes this little circle of the comfort zone or sphere, and it expands it enormously.
Right.
Like I'm not asking people to do higher or even simple math here, but if you take the diameter of a circle and you expand it even a little bit, you've got a lot more volume in there.
Yeah, again, like without getting too wonky, like the surface area of a circle grows by the radius squared. So it's, there's exponential potential there.
And we are getting a little wonky, but the thing is, a little change creates a enormously more capable human being.
Yes.
And a much more resilient one, which generally speaking creates a happier one.
So we have Cheryl North on, who is a new viewer from Scotland.
Very nice. Cheryl, welcome. We are glad.
She's not sure how she found us.
Really?
Yeah.
But hopefully, but welcome.
Yeah.
Cheryl, are you a happy person? But by nature?
Let us know.
Yeah, well, tell us. And actually, anybody that everybody's welcoming Cheryl.
Yeah.
Look at that. And by the way, we've broken our own rule. When we want somebody to do something, we don't just imagine they're going to do it and then condemn them for it. So we should be asking anybody that likes what you're hearing at any time, hit that like and love button. In Buckley's case, just furiously.
Yeah.
And if you want us to love you as much as we love Buckley and boost your oxytocin levels, then hit it a lot.
Yeah.
But more importantly, if you like this, we're going to share it it'll be posted on In Top Forums page and our pages. If you like this, then, and you think that somebody else might benefit from it, any of these shows, because In Top Forums is all about being better at everything that you do, business and in your personal life, ranging from food to, the outdoors and preparedness and marketing. So if you know somebody who is struggling maybe with a little bit of anxiety or trying to perform at a higher level, then share this with them. That would be great for us and great for them. I don't know what's going on. Tucker's making all kinds of noise here. And then adrenaline, which is the energy molecule.
Yeah.
So you can see how these things work together in a fight or flight situation. Oh, Tucker's finally going to leap onto the table. We had gone so long without it. So now we know, that there's this sort of expanded list. There's the dose molecules, and we want to figure out ways to increase these neurotransmitters that are the foundation or the base of happiness.
Yeah.
And then we also, because they're chemical, and most of happiness is a fleeting electrochemical reaction, we want to figure out ways to anchor that so that we can enjoy that more, yet without dropping into the slothful state of just blissful happiness that doesn't allow us to do anything anymore. Because eventually that will go away, because the behaviors of not reaching out to other people, the behaviors of not exercising are going to make these molecules diminish. So we have a lot of hacks. Some of these we've personally used, other people have shared with us, and we'll just share with you how effective they were for us. But just like these books, where there are just a few extras that we might recommend, you're only allowed 3. Sam and I are going to recommend that you try these, as many of them as it takes to really increase your happiness, but really focus on trying 1 or 2 at a time.
Yes.
Because if you say, oh, there's 30, I'm going to try 5 of them, and you've got a really good explanation for why that doesn't work. But if you do 2 or 3, they work. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One is so like I think it's a Zen story that the fox that chases 2 rabbits catches neither. So not to be too foo-foo, but if you try to throw too much into the system at once, you're probably not going to be able to commit sufficiently to any of these hacks, and then they won't be as effective.
And then if you haven't achieved what you thought you were going to achieve, you don't get that burst of the neurochemicals, that's the I did it sort of effect.
Then the flip side of that is you're going to expend a lot of effort and energy to do too many things at once. And then what if it works?
Yeah. Exactly.
which one worked? Was it
You
really
don't
a
know.
combination of all of them, or something or the other? So,
So it could be sort of a process, though, of
yeah.
and I'm going to tell you, I think, which ones I think are, if we're going to 80-20 these, which ones are the most important. So, for example, eliminating anxiety, that's not the type of fear or anger that we talked about that was useful last week. It's the type of low-level anxiety that's not really serving a purpose. And getting better sleep is really important to being in a state where you can experience both happiness and do things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to suggest that if you're having trouble sleeping, you would start with some of these sleep hacks. If you're not having trouble sleeping, maybe you start with some of these diet or exercise hacks or a meditative hack. So we'll talk about them and we'll sort of tell you our experience. So one is stop hanging out on social media, and we kind of covered that already. And some people may be mocking us because we both do share a lot of information.
Yeah, I mean, we're on social media a lot. I think both of us are, personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing that Pat and I talked about in a previous episode is this idea of sleep hygiene. Mm-hmm. So, as you're getting closer to, whether it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, have some sort of, wall, like after this time, no more social media, no more television, no more email.
I say no screens.
No screens is a simple way of putting it.
All of those are going to suppress melatonin levels.
Right.
So there's another reason to stop hanging out on social media, which is that you're not actually having a social experience or a bonding experience with a human being where there's contact. And so if you both stop hanging out so much on social media, that's not a problem for you and for me, because we're committed in our lives to another one of these hacks, which is we have one another to dinner.
Right.
We have other people over for meals. We intentionally do things that bond. We get together for almost a whole week with other people that fuel us. But stop hanging out on social media, and I think the simplest way to think of this is at least create a drop dead. Probably, depending on when you go to bed, it's got to be 8, 9, or 10 o'clock where you should just stop with the screens. Stop checking your email. That's related, but it's more than that. Mm-hmm. So for me, if I wake up and check my email, I feel like I have given my day, or the start of my day, and probably some of my most productive time, over to somebody else's agenda.
Right.
Somebody is telling me what to do, asking me questions. They could enrage me, as they often do. Mm-hmm. And so why should I start it out that way?
Right.
So I have specific times that I check email, and I don't check email frequently because what that does is it interferes with effectiveness and productivity.
Yeah, so two of these things really come down to one thing, and that's that idea of discipline, right? You're very disciplined about what you're doing before you need to get to sleep, and you're very disciplined about what you're doing throughout your day, not just to maintain, kind of control the inputs and make sure that you're productive, but also that idea that discipline leads to happiness, which we've heard a lot.
Yeah, Jocko, by the way, had the cover of Success magazine.
Yeah.
And we were privileged to spend quite a bit of time with Jocko at the Business Black Ops thing, and Jocko would absolutely agree with that. Discipline equals freedom. In fact, I think he sold me a T-shirt that said that.
Yeah.
Not at the event. It was like, hey, here's a T-shirt. But focus on time, not money. While it's true that obviously you need money to pay the bills and things like that, focusing on and protecting your time and blocking time for creative, higher level thinking about who you are, who you're helping, what you want to do, makes a gigantic difference for me. And getting discipline over my schedule was key to that, because the people that scheduled me for a long time would just fill every waking minute with mundane tasks. Yeah. And I was never more frustrated in my life than at that point, because there was no real control over my time. It was just filled with other things I had to do.
Yeah, I think part of what we're talking about as well as the idea of ritual is having a morning routine and a nighttime routine that is very intentional and purposeful, not incidental to your day. So if you go back and look at what you do from a day to day, I can almost guarantee you that it's very repetitive, but it's just an incidental, like, well, I need to wake up, and I need to brush my teeth, and I need to get ready for work, and I have to check my email. And you're just kind of, hamster wheeling through life. But if you can get up and create an intentional routine that really serves you, and that idea is of not checking email is, I don't want to be primed in a negative way for the rest of the day. So it's not the first thing that you do. Mm-hmm. So what can you do and create in your routine that will set you up and prime you to be happy in the right way and be more productive?
One of the authors in this research you're doing said, lose yourself. Do activities that to you, for me, at various points in my life, this varied, but playing tennis used to do that to me. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I would go on that tennis court. I never thought about anything else, probably because I was a bad tennis player and I had to think about everything I was doing. Mm-hmm. When I trained in martial arts, very much the same thing. When I'm on the mat, I just cannot think about other things.
Right.
If I'm playing golf well, I'm gone because it's such a zen game. For you, I do think, and by the way, there's another hack that's not in this list, but I think is related to this, which is look at things that are awe-inspiring. Mm-hmm. Like when we are at this event that we talk about from time to time, we go out to the ranch and you see the Milky Way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think about other things when I'm there and I'm looking at that. And it makes me feel like a tiny part of something much, much bigger.
Yeah.
Do you, anything you like to do where you intentionally lose yourself?
Yeah, I mean, for me it is training, which is an interesting thing because that is also my work. But, that's the difference between teaching and training. So for me, and I started this several years ago, is training in a martial art that I'm not an expert at has been great for this. So specifically it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but that idea of, getting out of my own realm of expertise and becoming a beginner again and needing to train, super intensely.
Find that informs all your other martial arts training too?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, because you're looking at everything you're doing in training in a totally different way through the eyes of the beginner. So I am constantly doing that too, as a brain exercise as well as the physical equivalent of that. I pick a topic that I really don't know much about, and I'll just dive into it.
Yeah.
And I'll become obsessive about it for a while. But what often happens is that I find synergies and things that bleed over into other areas of my life. This one has been very important to me at various stages of my life, and I see other people get through a failure only to have the greatest level of success and find happiness in ways they never thought they would.
Yeah.
And so the hack is learn to embrace failure. So a lot of people, when they fail, try to just sweep it under the carpet, leave it behind them. They don't. So for me, the trick to this, that trick to healthy embrace of failure, is to always find, okay, what was useful about that? What did it teach me? Who are the people I met that I'll have ongoing relationships with? So sometimes we fail, and we don't want, or we didn't find people with whom we had good relationships. The failure was we made a misjudgment about that or whatever. But a lot of times when we fail with lots of other smart people because the thing we were trying to do just didn't work in the time frame that we thought it would. But if you can say, I either learned this lesson, discovered this powerful tool, met these people, then failure becomes really a driver of both success and happiness.
Yeah, it's really powerful, and I think, and I see it in myself, is there's a tendency to either hide our failures because we think it takes away from our stature or self-worth, whatever you want to call it, but also inoculate ourselves from failure, and which is dangerous. And I see it in myself with my child, where you want to, the paternal instinct is to protect them, make sure they don't fall, make sure they don't get hurt. And we've talked about that in a previous episode too. Is like
how that could go bad.
We want to preserve their safety.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily mean, making sure that they never stumble, so to speak.
And we have a society now grappling with the result of having probably swung too far in that one direction. we've talked about these next two, practicing kindness and keeping a gratitude journal, and it really is true that when I met the Dalai Lama, he was talking about just this sort of thing, which is that in Western education, we never teach compassion, and it's sort of something that we stumble upon if we're lucky in life, and find that when we are compassionate, we get this incredible reward from it. Yeah. Actually, one of the reasons that the Dalai Lama left was he was entertaining me because I was there with a university president at the university where we were, and he was talking, and the university president said to him, "Well, Your Holiness, you know, you've said we should teach compassion. How should we do that?" And the Dalai Lama, I won't even attempt to do my impression, which I actually think is not that bad, but it might come off the wrong way. Yeah. So the Dalai Lama said to him, Dalai Lama, by the way, had a translator there wearing a navy blue jacket. I think he was carrying. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it wasn't like all love, peace and love. So the Dalai Lama said to this university president, "Well, why are you asking me? I'm like a monk from Tibet. You're the guys that have like screwed this up in your Western educational system. Like, I'm just saying, hey, happened to notice this when I was in town. You might want to take care of that. Like your tire's flat, buddy.
Yeah.
Why do I have to take it off and fill it?"
Right.
Which I thought was hilarious. So practicing kindness is something. It means what it says.
Yeah.
Practice it.
Yes.
So if you're in a pretty good place, or even if you're not, this one is a big boost. It's harder than the other one, keeping a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
Keeping a gratitude journal is easy. Start there.
Yeah.
But if you've been keeping a gratitude journal for a while, you know how that makes you feel. Then let's take the next step and schedule time to be kind to others. So this isn't just an accident. I'm kind when I see one who struggles. I'm kind because I saw someone struggling to cross the street. This is looking for opportunities and making sure that you have them too.
Yeah.
So being on the lookout for it every day. How can I show kindness to someone else? And scheduling it. Like there are things that I put into my schedule to do. This may sound weird. It's a little thing. And I don't know if it's having the effect that I want it to, but every paycheck, I sign every paycheck, and then I write a note on it, and I say, thank you. So that's expressing gratitude, but it's something that I'm doing to try to show that I really am grateful to everybody. Right. So for every employee, where I sign every paycheck, every time I do it.
You should get direct deposit.
Well, they all have direct deposit, so I don't sign all of them. I do sign all of the envelopes.
Yeah.
So, buy experiences, not stuff. So everybody hears this, and almost everybody I talk to gives lip service to this.
Yeah.
But they are usually telling me that while somebody's moving like a giant plasma. Well, you don't have plasma TVs anymore. I'm just LED TV into their living room. So, what does this mean for you? I'll talk about what it means for me. Buy experiences, not stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've found personally that receiving gifts are meh. Like physical things, and I'm kind of like a tech guy, but I don't really like collect tech type of stuff.
You don't have 20 iPads sitting around the house.
Exactly, like 19. But like I took my wife out to dinner last night because her birthday's coming up, and we spent.
I just want to go on the record as saying she looks very young. Like the police should come to your house. I'm just throwing that out there.
They often do. That's for different reasons. But like going out to dinner, or taking a trip, or seeing family. All of these things are essentially expenditures, but they're much more worth it to me than going out and buying a 70-inch television, or a bigger house, or a fancy car. That's something we talked about. Is like we both drive like pretty
ordinary
modest vehicles, and it's for us, it's not something that motivates us. Like I'm not a car guy. I'm not a guy that likes to race his car. So if you're a person that likes to race, then buy a car you can race. Because it's the experience of racing that you get the reward from.
Yes, that's the
not
other
the
part
car.
of this, which is buy stuff that creates experience.
Yeah.
So, buy a guitar. You always want to play
Yeah.
a guitar? Buy a guitar, you're going to have all these experiences.
Right.
Don't just buy it and leave it, then that's, But, buying a car that you're going to race because you've always wanted to race. This can go bad. I do know a guy who one time bought an RV, and he was going to, quote, drive across the country. But he never drove an RV. So he only got, 18 hours into the trip, and he sold his $80,000 RV for, $27,000 or something. So that could go bad. Be a little bit more sure that you want to play guitar.
I wonder if my father-in-law was watching. He just bought an RV.
Had he ever driven one before?
I don't know.
Yeah, well, it just could go very bad.
Interesting.
So, buy experiences. So, Alex and I just came back from Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So, and I made it a point when the kids were young, even people would say, why are you taking your kids to Greece when they're little? But even though they were little, they remember watching the Perseids meteor shower from the roof of a villa that we rented in Crete, where it was the sky was ink black. I mean, they still remember Vasily, the farmer that lived next door to us, who had them help kill a goat. So these are experiences that kids in America at least don't have very often.
Yeah, I have only witnessed a goat being slaughtered abroad.
Yeah, I've
never in the States.
Well, not in Malvern.
No.
So, on that note, it was one. Buy stuff that creates experiences. That's a good one. Let me see here. We've got a couple more for you. Okay, so here's the obvious one, and we've got a couple. You and Pat have a couple of good shows. If you realize that you're too sedentary, so this isn't like that you just look sedentary like me, that you actually are too sedentary. Because I'm not sedentary. I work out, I do body weight workout, walking, weightlifting, training every day. In fact, I just came back.
And you're freakishly strong because of it.
That's my favorite expression, which I keep repeating to people. I keep saying, Somnath does say I'm freakishly strong. And if anybody expresses doubt, I have several demonstrations I'm willing to give them. Actually, you're freakishly strong too. And once during the demonstration, remember recently, I was holding a bunch of boards. And so I was going to show people how to use, sort of focus your energy and break these boards. And I'm talking, and I'm sort of in a posture where I look ready. So Somnath breaks these boards, but typically it's the holder's responsibility then to sort of step back. So he doesn't realize I'm paying zero attention.
Yeah.
I'm like talking to somebody about a recipe for creamed spinach. Wow, that was a good one. So exercise. We have multiple shows on this, but what's absolutely clear is even a little bit, just a few times a week will make an enormous difference.
And exercise is one of those things like focus on frequency over quantity. If you create this high threshold where I have to go to the gym for an hour, or I have to lift weights, or I have to start running, or something that is implicitly creating a barrier for you to start, it's not going to regular basis if it's daily or 3, 4, 5 times a week, and it could be as simple as just walking for 20 minutes a day. It's going to make a huge impact.
This is so if you only are going to pick one and you're feeling like a little under the weather, you're not experiencing happiness often enough, I would say the sort of the next 3 we're going to deal with, which is exercise, yoga, form of exercise, and some type of breathing or meditative practice. Awesome place to start. So let's talk about those others. I mean, everybody that's listening to this exercise thing is going to go, oh, everybody says this. But it is true that you're probably, if you're saying that, making an excuse for not going and fixing that thing. Right. And I would even say, for most people in America today, adding some type of moderate exercise in is probably as important as adopting a breathing or meditative practice of some kind.
Yeah, and I would say the reverse, or the complement to that is adopting a breathing or meditative practice is probably as important as exercise.
Yeah, so that we just, if you're trying to tackle too many again, but you're going to start with one of these two.
Yeah.
And then the other one should be the next one.
Correct.
And let's talk about breathing and meditative practice. So in meditative practice, they're all different kinds. There's a kind of guided imagery. And if you want to start with something like that, a mindfulness type of practice, calm or headspace. Now, admittedly, we're telling people to go back to their phone or a screen, but it is an easy way to get started. But there are simple ways, including like the fourfold breath, something that we could even demonstrate for people. That if you did nothing but this, breathing in through your nose to the count of 4, holding it to the count of 4, breathing out to the count of 4 to empty your lungs, and holding them to the count of 4. So, holding it, 4, breathing out, emptying your lungs, and then holding that for 4. I mean, that just creates incredible bliss. So, we are not talking about a spiritual practice here, if you're worried about that. You can make it a spiritual practice.
Absolutely.
And there's some evidence that spiritual practice really improves levels of happiness too. But just a breathing practice a few times a day. So you're going to want to start with those two. Now, we only have, believe it or not, like 2 minutes left.
Oh my God.
Which seems insane.
Yeah.
We've got a lot more of these. Maybe we'll add another show. Because one of them involves eating carbs, drinking coffee, and chocolate. So we're missing.
Well, let's do some testing on that one. And we'll get back to you.
So again, when we're talking about carbs, we're really not talking about like having an extra pasta night each week.
Yeah.
We were talking about like leafy vegetables and things, but we do have some more stuff for you. So
that got a ton of likes and loves.
Extra pasta night or the chocolate and red wine.
I think the combination.
But before we go, I do want to mention one, which is that if you're considering or if you're already taking something to sleep or taking something, cognitive behavioral therapy for a lot of people who are contemplating drugs stops people from going on drugs. So we're not providing psychological or medical advice here. No. We're just saying, here's the thing that you may or may not have ever heard of that's absolutely worth thinking about and talking about. And then all of the ones on sleep, like one of the hacks in here is open your blinds and get more sun. And I would say the yin-yang part of that hack is close your blinds or put on a sleep mask to get deeper sleep, because
that is something that we use is blackout curtains in
our room
for
numerous reasons. Yeah. But see, I don't like it when I don't get the response anymore. Really quickly, should I just save these for the next show?
No, show them.
Show them? Okay. So last time when we were talking about fear and anger, I did 10% Happier was the book recommendation. That's the only reason I don't have it here, and because I was trying to keep the stack down because of the judgment when I do like that. But How to Choose to Be Happy is a great one. That is Foster and Hicks. Stumbling on Happiness. Now remember, you can only pick one of these to start with. But I do suggest reading more than one book, because while there's a lot of overlap, there's some unique ideas in each of these. Stumbling Upon Happiness by Dan Gilbert. Mindful Work. This is coming at happiness from sort of a right angle. How Meditation is Changing Business from the Inside Out. Learn the Secrets to Daily Joy and Lasting Fulfillment. Happier. That is by Talban Shahar. What Happy People Know, which is Dan Baker. Have you ever read this one? Love it. Very interesting. And The Worry Solution. So you may be noticing that there's those two sides of the coin there. Because worry and anxiety, I mean, they have their place. But if you find yourself having a lot of anxiety and worry, it's probably because you're a very smart, intelligent person that's figuring out all the reasons that things could go wrong, and that causes you to worry, and that interferes with happiness. So it seems like we're going to have another show to focus on more happiness hacks. However, next week, when our co-host will be back, and I will be flying in on the red eye. So tune in if you want to see this disaster with no sleep. Because you and I have done discipline camps before where we went
24 hours
at least, because I typically would not sleep for a day before too, just to get it ready.
Yeah.
And so we would train psychotically and not sleep at all. And this gets more interesting.
Yeah.
And occasionally, it's never violent, but I get that second wind. I go. So if you want to see that, tune in next week.
But
But what the topic for next week, you will not want to miss. If you own a business,